And good morning, everybody. You can come sit. I've got a special visitor for everybody on the call today. Just continuing to let people in, but we will still get started at 10 a.m. Don't let this little guy fool you. And I'm going to turn it over to Ryan here in a second. I still have 3 minutes. I'm continuing to let folks into the waiting room or from the waiting room. And I will be taking attendance with my little helper here. But again, as I've been continuing to remind you all, thank you for your patience when it comes to PDRs. I am still wrapping up posting PDRs from Tuesday's webinar. And I've actually found that it's easier, especially when we have 2 per week, that I can just kind of do both at once. So just be patient. Check back with me early next week if you don't see them posted. And again, appreciate your patience there. But excited to have you all joining us today. And thank you to those two who took some extra time and posted some questions for Ryan or submitted the Google form. I know Ryan and I thought that those questions were really insightful, really good questions to be asked. And I'm sure Ryan will be hitting on those today during the presentation. Speaking of questions, if you do have a question as we go about today's presentation, feel free to drop them in the chat or shoot me a text. That's probably the easiest, I would say, for those of you that don't have my phone number. It is 262-894-9627. You can shoot me a question that you might have there. Otherwise, we'll go ahead and get started here in just a few moments. And this is being recorded. Ryan, I can always send it to you after the fact too, but we do post it on our members only page on our section website. So again, if you just go to wisconsin.pga.com and log in the upper right-hand corner using your pga.org login, you can see all of our recordings will be posted there. This one, along with the one earlier that Kim Schaefer and I hosted on Tuesday, will be posted by the end of the week, at the latest early next week. So give it another minute. All right, everybody, I've got 10 a.m. on my watch. Ryan, we can see your screen perfectly. Again, I'll continue to let stragglers in, but Ryan, take it away.
All right, awesome. Thank you, Erica. I've got a couple screens going here, trying to have the presentation and be able to see any of you that come off camera. So please say something. If I don't recognize, if you're waving your hand or whatever, I may not be looking there. So, but really excited to have so many people on here today. I know there was close to 90, I think, that were registered, and I'm sure we'll have a number more joining as we kind of get going. But as Erica mentioned, we put out an opportunity for some feedback and input or questions a couple days ago, and I had a whole presentation ready to go, mostly around interviewing and job posting and so on. Some of the things that have come up kind of repeatedly over phone calls and emails this winter. But the questions that were submitted were so compelling and so interesting, I thought, that I yesterday around 1 o'clock decided to just scrap what I had prepared up to that point and kind of start over. So hopefully this all resonates and is really relevant to the group that's on here. And we'll have some time toward the end for some additional Q&A if there's anything we didn't quite touch on. So, as a starting point, I took all of the information that was submitted, all the questions that were in there, plugged it into Chat GPT and asked it to give some kind of high level themes and summaries that came out of it. So as you can see, these 5 are the areas that kind of came out. So career development and advancement, number of things kind of under that: compensation and financial planning, job search and networking tools, communication with employers, and current industry trends and planning. So I want to just kind of break this down and go through some thoughts on each of these areas. Again, these are things that come up on a regular basis, but obviously, personal situations and realities, these may be more or less relevant to you in your current situation. But hopefully something that, even if it's not on your radar right now, will be beneficial to you in the near future when it does come up. So starting in the career development and enhancement realm, one of the questions that was submitted directly on there, and there was a couple really kind of in this realm, is, how do I stand out and advance my career? I think one of the biggest things that I would suggest is you've got to be a unicorn as much as you can. The question or the comment that comes up time and time again when I'm working with employers, whether it's on a simple complimentary posting on PGA.org, or especially with a search committee looking at a full process. At the outset, they'll describe everything that they think that they need, the things that they want, the things that would be nice to have, some of the realities of the facility, and the comment that comes up in some way, shape, or form is, yeah, here's all the stuff that we need. I know we're kind of looking for a unicorn, right? And to some degree that is true in some situations. I've had a couple true unicorns over the last few years, but most of the time, a large percentage of what they're describing, though there may be some nuance to it, is fairly standard operating procedure if you've been in the industry for a few years. And then there's that other portion that is very, very specific to that club. And sometimes that's a smaller or larger amount of what they really need. But if we know that their mentality is that they're looking for a unicorn, then the last thing you would ever want to do is be a zebra, right? And so that takes on several different connotations. That's going to apply to your materials that you're putting together. That's going to apply to the choices that you make as far as how you represent yourself, the places that you choose to be employed, the places you choose to volunteer your time, the specific areas of the business and the operation that you really kind of try to put your mark on. But all of these different things, we really want to keep in mind. The best way to stand out and the best way to advance in your career is to make sure that you're standing out. And so, how do I do that? There's a number of different ways. I mentioned just a second ago some of the tasks and elements of the job that you might look at. But there's also an education and a professional development context to this. So there's a number of different ways you can do that. Obviously, PGA of America has continuing lifelong education with specialized, certified, and master professional options. That may be a fantastic option depending on what your current situation is, what the job is that you want, what's your dream job. Maybe you're already in your dream job, and if that's the case, then going through some of these additional certifications with the association may be a great way to go. But if we look at the fact that things are evolving and we've got more of a business forward market right now, it may be a good idea to seek out some other things that not every other golf professional is necessarily thinking of. And I have this conversation, whether it's a group setting like this, or speaking with my counterparts at PGA HQ, or a young professional. it's a really good idea to look outside of our association as well. We do have some phenomenal education. We've got some great options in house, but at the same time, that is through a golf lens only. And if you're working with a board who's filled with entrepreneurs and high level executives and some of these titans of industry, or maybe it's a public facility and you've got a board member, a board of directors you have to work with on the park district level, or any of these various things, looking outside and expanding the professional development that you take part in can be a really good way to, again, make yourself stand out and make yourself just a little different than the other professionals that may be out there. So just a few of these things: American Development Model. Hopefully, most of you are familiar with that. Association of Golf Merchandisers. They've got some education and some gatherings they do throughout the course of the year. CMAA has some great education with their BMIs. If you're thinking about any type of higher level facility management, or even just standing out and being a little more intentional about what you're doing in the golf department. They've got some good leadership things and various modules of that nature. Coursera has stuff for free or paid component if you want to get the certificate that goes with it. But this is higher education universities from UW to Harvard and everything in between, where you can go on and find anything from marketing class to accounting, management and leadership strategies, really a wide variety, but another way to separate yourself there. And then hopefully a number of you've seen what Jeremiah is doing over at Wisconsin Lutheran College with their new program and the WPGA directed certificate that they've got. But any of these things that can really help you to stand out, one, in the knowledge base that you have, but two, if you put some of these things on a resume and very few or none of the other resumes in the stack have that, that's going to help you stand out and just get you, moving into the next round of the process. Another thing that I like to suggest is, if you think of, okay, what is my dream job, right? Could be director of golf at a super high-end private club of your choice. Go to that scenario. Try to create kind of a case study for yourself almost. Go to that place and say, okay, not how do I represent myself and what I have and what I bring to the table to that group, but flip the script, right? Put yourself in their shoes. Sit on the other side of the table for a moment and think, okay, if I was a member at a place like this and I was engaged and active enough to be on their search committee, what are the things that I would want? What are the things that I would need? What's this club kind of looking for? What would an ideal candidate really represent from a skill set, qualifications, background, places they've been, the people they know, all those different things that would make a strong impression on the search committee, and then tailor your path to that, right? I went up to Sand Valley last spring and spoke to the SVPD up there. And going into that, I had put together a case study kind of in this, hypothetical country club. And now all of the kids are a member of the search committee. And it was amazing the things that they realized and the observations they made about what they would think of these three hypothetical candidates that we had, that they wouldn't have gotten to if I was just telling them, hey, this is what you should do with your resume, this is what you do with your career, right? So sometimes putting yourself in that other environment, seeing things from the other side of the table can really benefit you in what choices you make to set yourself up for that in the future. And then as you start to, as you identify that path and you start down it, you want to build your experiences, learn from different mentors, keep in touch with those mentors, leverage those mentors, and then target facilities that'll prepare you for that dream job, right? Whatever that step is. And as you're kind of climbing the rung in your career progression, and you start to learn how to run a phenomenal tournament and how to give an impactful lesson and how to execute a strong open to buy and the visual merchandising goes along with it. One thing that has become abundantly clear to me is it's not enough just to be able to do those things, right? You don't want to just stop at, okay, I now know how to run a great tournament, right? What's your take on it? What do you bring to the table? What's your impact to that operation or that tournament or whatever it is? So develop your style and your signature contributions, and then leave your print with who you are as a golf professional. Because again, if we go back to that initial premise that when they're looking for somebody, they're probably looking for a unicorn or somebody that truly stands out. You've got to be able to stand out, and the things that you do, the way that you do them, the stance that you take on what's the right way and not, those are going to be the things that really leave your mark and make you, stand out from the pack in terms of not being a zebra. The next area we came into was compensation and financial planning. This is one that I do spend a high percent of my time on, working with professionals out in the field. So first, wanted to look at preparing for the conversation, right? The first step when you're going into a negotiation of any kind, and it may be directly monetary compensation, or it may be, some of the other elements that make up your overall package. But you really want to look first at what is it that you want? What is it that's most important to you? I think all of us would agree, making more money and having more cash coming in is always on the table. It's always a good thing. It's always nice. But depending on, where you're at in your life and your career, what your family situation is, et cetera, that may or may not be the thing that would really drive you to continue, doing a great job at that facility or in that position that you're in. So, maybe look, is it a security thing, right? Are you looking for an increase in your salary and knowing that base amount is coming in? And I don't want to just speak about a traditional kind of head professional role. This is true, if we look at instructor positions. This is something that's shifted quite a bit over the last few years, where it's now become a lot more common for a base salary to be included, and in some cases, a really high base salary with a very small percentage of incremental revenue share, because that desire for security is a little bit stronger than it was maybe 10 years ago, 15 years ago, where you would have had, a purely eat what you kill scenario. You've got permission to teach here, but you're going to make basically what you can charge for. And so identifying what it is that you're looking for, right? Is it that salary? Is it the increase on that secure amount? Are you maybe wanting to ask for a performance bonus, right? And have things tied to the overall facility revenues and margins, or the golf department as a whole, and establishing some metrics where, if you come in and do a fantastic job, and the facility does financially better, that you would also, share in that benefit. Or, maybe looking at commissions. So merchandise, it's a revenue share, a percentage, sales targets, whatever the case may be. Any new members that come into the facility, I don't know how many of you have full list right now, but initiation fees have been going up over the last 5 years in most of the country, definitely around here. So if you're bringing in a new member and the initiation fee is $10,000, and you spent 5 hours on the phone, on the golf course, whatever it is, leading up to that person coming in, maybe it should be an option for you to have a commission off of that, right? Maybe there's a $500, $1,000 stipend that comes if you demonstrate the impact that you had on that person coming to the club. Member retention is another one. Playing golf with your members, teaching all these different things. If you have a member that leaves, trying to replace them is significantly more expensive than keeping them on board. So looking at any monetary compensation and commission that may come off of that. And then outings, I think it seems pretty common at this point, not universal for sure, but to have some sort of either a flat fee, maybe it's an extra $100 or $200 if you have to work a corporate outing on a Monday, or maybe it's a per head dollar amount, 10, 15, $20, somewhere in there, that may amount to, an additional dollar amount coming into your check for doing those things. But all of those come into that direct compensation component that you may be looking for in your negotiation, or it may be something else, right? Like there's deferred compensation vehicles. I'm not talking about the deferred comp through the PGA in this case, but some sort of a vehicle that would take, and instead of giving you money for the job performed right now, it would be a deferred compensation vehicle where the club would take, maybe it's $5, $10, $20,000 a year, put it into an investment vehicle in your name, and then there's a threshold, usually might be 5 years, might be 7. I've even seen 10 years of a vesting period, and then they're putting the money in all the way along. And once you get to that point, then that's yours, whether you now exit or not. But that's another way for kind of the club and the professional to look at longevity together and commitment to each other, and maybe change a little bit of the financial burden in the way that it hits the books. But then we also have non-monetary compensation and benefits, right? And sometimes this can be even more important and more valuable than some additional dollars going into the checking account. So maybe it's looking at additional PTO or vacation days. Maybe it's family friendly schedule and being able to really tackle that work-life balance component, being able to have certain days that you're not there, certain hours that you're not there. I know one professional that recently got things worked out where he now can drop off his kids at school every morning, even midsummer, right? Like the club knows for sure he is not getting to work until 8:45, 9 o'clock, with very, very few exceptions, because that was something that was important to him in these years with his family. Education tournament allowances, I'll touch on the education part a little bit more later. But having things that continue your development, they're going to benefit the club. They're going to get the club's name out there in the tournaments you're playing in. And then family privileges. And I know conversations with a number of you may already have this in place, but with the amount of time that you're spending at the club in the summer, especially the long evening hours, being able to have your family come out, or be able to go out together and play golf on an open afternoon, and not have to go find somewhere else to play and pay and all that stuff. But any of these other things that could be concessions that you would ask for, first and foremost, we have to decide what is it that you're looking for. Because if you just go in with the thought that, well, my deal is coming up, I need to renegotiate my contract. If you don't have this planned out for yourself, then when you get through, even if you are, quote unquote, successful, it may not really improve your quality of life. It may not, hit the notes that you're looking for in terms of, enhancing your current situation. The next step in preparing for the conversation is really looking at what have you done up to this point. There's a number of things that come into play as far as looking for that negotiation and reworking a contract or a employment agreement. And one of them is just being able to demonstrate, look, I'm exceeding in the expectations that have been set out in a number of different ways, right? So looking at the golf department performance specifically, overall facility performance, there are very, very few, if any, golf oriented facilities that I'm aware of that people join because of the restaurant, not the golf course, right? The golf course, the community, the friendships, all of those things are central. And so if the facility is doing well overall, that is directly related and of credit to the golf department. New member impact, merchandise performance, overall golf utilization, are the rounds up significantly and you still found a way to make it work with a slight variance in your payroll. Are tournaments up? Did you bring in new Monday outings or corporate events? Any of those things in that realm that can help demonstrate why, what you were paid what you were agreed to be paid 3 years ago, when the club was doing 16,000 rounds, just doesn't cover it if the club is now doing 22,000 rounds, right? And your hours are going up and all those things. So being able to use those data points and storytell around it is pretty critical. Any unique member points? So how many members do you interact with in a given week or over the course of the year? Are you tracking, how many, if there's 300 members of the club, are you tracking how many unique members you actually had a phone call with, email with, conversation, lesson, whatever the case may be? But any of those data points, as far as your member interactions and the impact that has on member attention and their satisfaction at the club, their spend at the club, all of those things are very, very relevant when it comes to this conversation. Cost control, as I mentioned a moment ago, if you're able to keep costs in line and hit budget or maybe just slightly over budget, if we end up playing golf at the end of February like last year, being able to explain why there was additional labor fees and that type of thing, that were incurred, but trying to be creative in you know how you best serve those things and keep your margins high on the merchandise and all those different things, is another bucket to look at. Hours worked. I had this conversation with a professional in Southern Illinois last year, at a nice club down in the very southern portion of the section. And he said he'd been trying to him, less time was what he needed. It wasn't more money. It was, he was working too many hours at the club and he hadn't been able to convince the board to give him an additional assistant professional. So it was him, one assistant, and one or two shop help, kind of retired individuals. And so they started tracking, didn't punch into a time clock, anything like that, but they had a logbook, and every day he would track what time he got there, what time he left, what time his assistant got there, what time they left, so on and so forth. And being able to share that data at the end of the year when he went to the board and said, look, we're basically our FTE equivalent is like 3.5, and there's two of us. This isn't sustainable, right? And he puts it, in the context of John, his assistant, saying, I don't want to lose him, and at this point, like, the only way that's gonna, get better is if we can add another individual. And it really, really made a difference in the way that conversation went, because now it wasn't just, him complaining or giving his opinion or that sort of thing. It was data oriented. It gave them something to really look at and be able to sink their teeth into, and made a huge difference in the way the subsequent conversations went. And then the final one here is testimonials. If you're in a public facing facility, you may already use reviews and testimonials on a regular basis, whether it's Google reviews or Yelp or any other form that you collect that information through. But being able to go through and utilize those, for this context is pretty important, right? And if you're not in that space and it's on the private side of things where reviews aren't necessarily as common, still being able to go to some of your members and get testimonials from them, utilize their words, utilize the impact you've had on them and the job that they've done. Not to have them go have the conversation with the GM or the board for you, but to be able to go to some of those individuals that you've had an impact with, that trust, that think highly of you, and say, would you mind help me out? I've got this, conversation coming up. We worked together a lot this year on your game, or on that special group, that corporate group of 24 you brought out, or whatever the case may be. Would you mind doing just a brief testimonial on the job that I've done for you? And you'd be amazed how quickly people will say yes, and how much that makes an impact, because now it's not you trying to tell the GM or the president of the board, the job you've done and how much it was appreciated, or the impact that you've really had. It's now peer-to-peer conversation, which is a completely different level that you just wouldn't be able to get on the same page of. So having them, share those testimonial statements for you and then utilizing them appropriately can be a great way to to kind of help paint that full picture of what you've done and the impact that you've had on the facility. So the next thing I want to look at is in the realm of negotiation tools. So we've got the section compensation overview report. I believe this went out recently, section wide, and we are going to start sharing this quarterly. This first iteration, we had private facilities, head professional or director of golf, and assistant professional, and then public access facilities, head professional, director of golf, and assistant professional. So that's the 4 pages that you see represented there, and the different buckets, 52, 68, 42, and 32 that were in each of those respective categories. Plan is to update this quarterly and have this information shared out so that you all have quick access to it. I know one thing that has come up several times over the last couple of years is, where did the compensation tool go? It used to be really easy back in the day to hop on, look at, put a couple filters in and get some information kind of real time on what else was going on as far as compensation in your area or in the industry. And that was taken down a few years ago. There's a whole bunch of reasons that was the decision that was made. Primary of which was it was old data that hadn't been scrubbed well, and so there was some pretty erroneous stuff in there, depending on what filters you used. But there is something to be said for you being able to go on and get quick access or a quick idea anytime you want to. So this will be coming out, excuse me, on a quarterly basis this year and moving forward. My plan is to add some additional categories as we go along here. I've pulled the information since doing this first version, pulled the information for teaching professionals as well, and we'll continue to try to make this as impactful and beneficial to everybody as possible. But part of the reason, excuse me, part of the reason that the tool was taken down is there's also a there's also a reality that depending on where you're at, the section snapshot may or may not be kind of spot on relevant for you, right? So if you are at one of the very, very top end private facilities in Milwaukee, the section average and this section data is going to be pretty skewed away from what the reality is at a club like that. Because this takes into account facilities that are private from all across the state of Wisconsin or the section of Wisconsin. We could have some private facilities in the northwest corner of the state where it's much more rural. Cost of living is significantly different. Cost of membership is significantly different, and therefore the compensation just naturally is going to be significantly different. And then on the flip side, you could have a facility, flip that script. That facility up there still may want to know what's appropriate compensation for a professional in my situation. Well, if you put this section data in front of a board or a president up there, they're going to say, well, that's all well and good, but it's completely skewed by Milwaukee and Madison, and the other clubs that are down there. This doesn't apply to us, and so that's why this is one piece of the puzzle. This is one leg of the stool, if you will. But then we also have the custom and targeted compensation reports that have become really kind of my strongest tool in trying to look at, okay, what is the going rate for other facilities, for other professionals in a similar situation, right? So with this, I'll work with a professional and if the professional reaches out to me, hopefully, I'll work with a professional and say, okay, let's identify 10 to 12 facilities that when you go to your club president, board, county commissioner, whoever it is, they're going to look at that list of clubs and say, oh yeah, okay, I recognize those. Those are all fairly similar to us. And then we can go through and our data analyst, Ben, at headquarters, will go through and pull the financial information from the compensation profiles for those 12 clubs. In this hypothetical case, this is really how I get the information back. I don't get individual data points. I get, okay, out of the 12 you gave me, 9 of them we have a compensation profile for. And then here's the average base pay, here's the average total compensation, 90th percentile, 25th percentile, and a couple spots in between. And it really helps to paint a picture of, okay, for the clubs that we know are similar to us, and that may be geographically, that may be number of holes, it may be, monthly dues amount, maybe a steam, like any number of things. We can make that list whatever you would like. But it really helps to contextualize things on a much more personal level. So again, going back to that club in the northwest corner of the state, we can focus on facilities that are up in that rural area, up in the North Woods, and try to get a much more appropriate data set when it comes to what compensation should potentially look like based on what some of the other clubs in that list are doing. And then the other piece to the puzzle is the current market conditions. I just quickly went on and took this snapshot yesterday with just a director golf and head professional filter. So these are across the country. It's not necessarily just in Wisconsin, but it gives you an idea of, okay, here's what some of the other clubs that have openings currently are listing their positions for. Here's what they're offering to pay. And we can take that and do a couple different things with it. Depending on the situation, if it's an open position, I've gone through a number of times and I can do a report that shows, okay, let's say for an assistant golf professional, the last 2 years in the Wisconsin section, here's all the assistant pro postings that we've had, taking out the names. Here's the compensation that they offered, and here's the number of applicants that they got. And it really helps to paint a picture pretty quickly where you can see, okay, when you get down to a certain point of kind of a compensation threshold, they just aren't getting applicants, or maybe it's only 1 or 2. And so that can really help because it shows, a very realistic market reaction to similar jobs and what they were posted at. And that sometimes is different than what the compensation profile information says, only because if in most cases, if you're going to leave one position, it's going to be for a position that's going to pay better, or at least that's one of the things in the bucket. So I've gone so far as to take some of that data and look at some of the information of what compensation looked like at selected facilities and openings over the last couple of years. This was when I did about 1.5 years ago for a professional, and we just looked at the top compensated executive searches that had been done in the past 24 months, and then we're able to demonstrate what the base pay and total compensation was offered. This particular situation, this worked very well because this individual was pretty close to the top end of his market as far as any of the other facilities that were similar to him. Didn't necessarily want to go anywhere. Was really happy at his club, but we kept looking at custom reports in different ways, and it was hard to make a case for him deserving more money based on local market conditions. But we were able to put this together and let the membership draw the conclusions that, hey, we think this guy is an absolute rock star. We love him here. He's done an amazing job. If he starts to look around, this is what he's been looking at over the last 24 months. These are the jobs that come to his email, and he's looking at this job saying, man, that's a $400,000 job. Like, how long is it going to be before one of those sounds good enough to lure him away from us? We better, come to the table and try to make sure that he's very happy here and that we're secure with the pro that we love so much. So there's a number of different ways to go about, the compensation and negotiation phase of your career. And I would love the opportunity to partner with you in that and work with you on, what the right data is, how to position it, how to storytell around it, and hopefully, get to those conclusions that we're looking for. Um, One other question that came up in here was, as you're getting later in your career and looking at retirement planning. So this is a resource that should be available really, really soon. We're waiting for, final approval internally on a couple things, but the career services team has worked over the last 8 months on putting together kind of a retirement playbook. And so you can kind of see the table of contents over here. It's about a 15-20 page document, but it goes pretty deep into, even at 20 years away from retirement, what are some things you should be considering at 10 years, at 5 years, negotiating your last contract. And so we've really tried to go through a number of things that, as a group, the career consultants have experienced or helped people through over the last few years, and try to get it in one place so that, yes, we want you to still, reach out and hopefully, I can help give some additional personalized examples, and help you work through it. But, having some things that would allow you to be a little bit more, self-sufficient or get the ball started on your own, is definitely something we've been focusing on. So this should be available very soon. In the meantime, what I've done over the last few years is I have about a half a dozen examples of either final contracts or, kind of retirement letters, or, different examples of things that have been put in place as professionals were ready to call it twilight of their career, and be able to share those with you so you can look and see, look, here's what one club did for their pro that was retiring after 30 years. Here's what one club did for, as a succession plan 2 years before the club, the pro retired after 20 years. And being able to share some of those with you, if that's the point that you're at, to be able to, again, not, you don't have to reinvent the wheel. It's not you necessarily asking for, hey, would you guys think of doing a tournament in my honor, or, would you help me with healthcare for a year or two, or, are you thinking of maybe making me emeritus and a free membership? Any of those things that might be kind of floating around in the back of your mind, that it's much, much easier for you to say, look, here's a few things that the career consultant shared with me. Why don't you read them over? It's from other clubs, things that have been done for other professionals as they were at this point. I know you guys have already maybe started some conversations on what it might look like from that side, but just wanted to share that with you. And when the time is right, I'd love to have another conversation on it and give them the ability to start looking at, oh yeah, you know what, we really need to take care of John. What are we going to do here to be the right type of place and appreciate the pro that we've had for all these years, and help him out in his retirement. So being able to have those examples, has been pretty effective as well. All right. The next area is job search and networking tools. So I went through this on one of the seminars I did last year. But this idea of how do you evaluate, future opportunities or potential opportunities, or even your current opportunity, and maybe, trying to figure out what do I want to ask for when it comes to that negotiation time. And so, breaking it down into these 6 buckets is something that I kind of developed after, I don't know, hundreds of conversations with professionals around here. But looking at, the cash, how much money are you going to make for the job? That one's pretty straightforward. Joy in the work is not, do I have the skill set to be able to do the tasks? Not am I competent, not am I able to do it, but do I actually enjoy it, right? You may be able to give a good lesson and lead a fun clinic and help people, but if it doesn't give you joy, if you really, if the thing that makes you sing is being in the office doing amazing tournament prep or retail or whatever any of those other things that may be on your list of things to do, if there's 40% of the time that's required of you for teaching, that may not really, may not really check this box. The next one is free time, call it work-life balance, but are you able to enjoy the fruits of your labor and spend time with family and friends, your hobbies, that sort of thing? Geography, where is the position located? Is it in a state that you like, a city that you like? How far away do you have to drive in order to be able to afford to live around there? The culture of the facility, which sometimes on the outside looking in can be a little bit difficult to identify, but do their values align with yours? Do they appreciate their employees? Do they reward their employees? Any of those different things. Is there a mentor that you're going to be able to learn from or work with? And what's the dynamic between the other people that work there? Any of those things that kind of go into the feel of the place. And then your career goals, right? Like what is that dream job? What is that thing that you're working toward? And does this get you a step closer? Is this a side step? The one thing with goals is sometimes they change, right? So being able to look at how how this position plays into where you want to ultimately get is another thing to look at. And then once you evaluated each of those individually and kind of a percentage of how full is this individual bucket, now you've got kind of a matrix there where you can go through and say, okay, that there's going to be compromises with everything, right? There is no perfect job. Sometimes you get pretty close, but there is no perfect. But you have to decide which of these things am I willing to make a little compromise on, which of these things is actually more important to me than maybe I realized before. And then you can more easily make the determination, okay, is this the opportunity that I want to go after? Or it's close, but I'm gonna still wait and see what the next thing is that comes along. So that's kind of the first step of trying to figure out, okay, because it takes a lot of time and energy to go through a job search or to apply for a position. Getting your resume and your cover letter and your materials tailored to that position, looking into what networked connections you have to that facility or that position, going through interview preparations and all the different things that come along with it. It's a lot of time and energy, and so you want to make sure that you're being selective, and you don't want to hold yourself back from anything that could turn into a great opportunity by being too selective. But at the same time, trying to identify, okay, which ones are worthwhile for me, which ones are not. This can be a tool to help with that. So as a general statement, there's three things that are really getting the attention of employers currently. So that's using data and statistics to tell your story and paint your picture, incorporating color and design features into the resume, and incorporating interactive features, links to videos, portfolio websites, presentations, that sort of thing. So I want to just touch into those for a couple minutes here. So this is the old way of doing a resume. It's fine if your resume looks like any of these three that you see on the screen right now. You're not. It's not that it's bad. Okay, I know I've got good bag nail out there, but 85% of the resumes that I receive or that I see get submitted for a position look some semblance of these resumes in front of you. And so, by that, if it's 80 or 85% that are in this, in this design or category, you're not at a place, right? So it's not necessarily a bad thing. But our resumes in the golf industry have looked about the same for the last, I don't know, maybe 30 years. We are seeing a pretty strong trend toward that changing. And so, taking something like this and trying to bring it a little more forward, part of the reason that they used to teach us to do it this way, is it was based on, the software and tools and everything that was available. If you ever saw somebody try to put color on a resume 20 or 30 years ago, it looked like a child did it, right? I mean, the software that was out there was just not good enough to make it look clean and professional. We were still, a lot of time submitting through snail mail at that point, so you had to take that document and then print it out, and the printers weren't really good enough to make it look sharp and professional, and so some of it was out of necessity, that they said, no, IBM School of Business, black and white, make it look the same as everybody else. Don't put a headshot, don't put a color, keep it very straightforward and kind of blend in with everybody else. Well, if you go back to what we talked about at the very beginning here, being a zebra is not going to work anymore. Just being another one of the applicants is not going to get you across the line. So we want to look at how do we enhance that. And I'll show you a positive example of that here in just a second. The next part I wanted to just touch on is data and statistics and why they are so important. So if you look through this list of bullet points, and this I redacted where it came from, but I pulled this off of a real resume that came my way. What do we have? 9, 10 bullet points here. If you look through that and you really try to think, what type of operation am I looking at, right? Obviously, there's a mention of Park District there, but is this a public facility? Is it private? I think it's public because it says something about Park District, but is it a place that's charging $15 for a green fee? Is it a place that's charging $115 for a green fee? Is there, food and beverage and other amenities at the place? Is this a position where that assistant professional might have been paid, a $65,000 base, or is this maybe a $20,000 base? Unfortunately, we have no idea. I would suggest that the way that this is written, there is almost no impact. There is almost no definition of what type of experience this particular assistant professional had at this facility. And if you look at it, the prism that I always suggest to look through things at is, if you read your bullet point, you say, okay, is this a statement that any golf professional in a position similar to mine at a facility similar to mine should be able to say? And if the answer is yes, like most of these are, if the answer is yes, then the way that it's written is more of an expectation. It's a job description item, if anything, right? I mean, at pretty much let's assume it's a public facility. At pretty much every public facility, one of the assistants is in charge of the handicap services. One of the assistants is in charge of merchandising. Most of the assistants teach private and group lessons. There's just nothing that stands out about, one, what type of operation it might have been and how that translates to the operation that I'm hiring for, if I'm looking at this through the eyes of a search committee or a hiring manager. And two, I don't really know. I mean, other than, he had a little bit of management, did some training, and they had one big US Kids tournament. Outside of that, I don't know what type of impact this particular individual brought to that operation. I have no idea if he was the all-star, if he was the one person everybody turned to. I'm being a little bit harsh and skeptical here, but the point is there's not much that's really shining through about what this individual brought to that particular experience that he had, and then how would that translate and propel him into the position that I'm hiring for. And that's really what we're trying to solve for. When we look at data statistics, if he would have said that he assisted in the logistical plan of the clubhouse renovation, which is awesome, but if he would have said that he assisted in the clubhouse renovation for $5.7 million, that would have got a little bit more of my attention, right? Or if in his lessons statement, he gave a little bit of context and he said that, in the 2 years at this facility, he increased, his individual lessons from, by 220% from X to X, and increased group lessons by another 60%. Anything in that realm that tells me a little bit of, okay, what was the impact? What did this person bring to the table? They make changes that created an increase in revenue. Two things happen as the one reading the resume. One, I automatically correlate it to what my operation is, right? Okay, well, I know we're currently doing about this many dollars worth of individual lessons a year and this much in group lessons. Gosh, if we had a 220% increase, that would be holy cow. Okay. And then it goes immediately to, I want to ask him a question. I want to ask how he did that, right? Like, how did that actually come about? And so it really is important to help them see you in a different light. All right. So the next component, so color and design features. So this is where we want to go with the new look of the resume. You can see there's headshots are optional. I'm personally a fan of headshots because we're in a relationship business. Why not let them see a little bit of who you are right off the bat? And then some design features where it makes your eye kind of bounce around a little bit, can really be impactful. As far as getting them to spend more time reading your resume. So this is kind of where I usually encourage people to go with modernizing their resume. Tools to use here. So this website, canva.com, you can go on there and find hundreds of fillable, easy to use, easy to edit templates for resumes. It's free. They have a subscription. They have maybe some premium options. You shouldn't need to pay for anything on here. They have hundreds of options that are free to access, free to use and download. And then ChatGPT, I know somebody had asked about AI. It will not do everything for you. The way I look at it, it doesn't do the job for you, but it can give you an incredible head start. So whether that's writing an article for your club newsletter, or looking at what you want to include on your resume, it can really help as far as, okay, I can't quite get the phrasing right on this. If you take your first draft, plug it in and say, look, you're writing a resume, you're going after this type of job, you're going for this facility, give me 5 different versions of this bullet point. Boom, 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 boom. And then you have to go look at it and say, okay, I like this one, this is perfect. Or maybe I like a little bit of this one and a little bit of this one, so I'm going to combine that, right? And that's where you put your own professional spin on it and expertise. But it really can give you a huge head start. And there's a number of them out there, Gemini and different things. But Canva is definitely a huge tool as far as improving your resume. And then I mentioned, the interactive component. So, we don't print and mail in a resume anymore. Everything is viewed on a computer, laptop, phone, whatever it might be. So that gives you the ability to put some interactive links on your submission. So Mickey Finn, Was in South Dakota for a number of years. Then he moved down to Wolf Creek, and then was in transition and ended up landing a great position as COO at Lake Quivira in Kansas. But this was something that he put together while we were working together on getting him into that next position. So this is, he's got the link on his resume. It takes you to this professional portfolio site, and you can see he's got some, membership, turn operation, merchandising. He's got some verbiage down there on, kind of his philosophies and visions, and then a number of different photo galleries. I just grabbed a little bit here. So he's got some cool stuff that they did for tournaments, and then, did a family's interests and hobbies thing, and that's one thing, like I mentioned with the unicorn, they're hiring an individual. When you get down to the end, especially when you're talking a highly sought after position, but definitely when you get down to the last 6, and especially the last 2 or 3, every one of those is a quality golf professional. They can all do the job. They can do the tasks necessary of filling that role. So at that point, the club is looking for the individual. They're looking for the whole person. They want to know about your hobbies. They want to know about where you volunteer time. They want to know about, any other things that you're involved in. And so, he just kind of took that directly and said, all right, great. I'm going to show him. I'm a horseman. I like skiing. I like fishing. I like hunting, all these different things. And, you can learn so much more. You can learn infinitely more about somebody scrolling on one of these professional websites for 30 seconds than you can looking through a resume for 3 or 4 minutes. And so just looking at any opportunities to enhance and make your submission stand out can really be helpful. And then this was another example, just kind of more of a highlight reel version, kind of a quick video they put together. There was a couple questions on social media that were submitted, and I wanted to touch on it real quick from a couple different angles. So first, and the way the question was phrased, is something along the line of how important is it how important is it to update to have a LinkedIn profile? And then how important is it to update your LinkedIn profile as you go through your career? I will tell you, one of the very first thing that happens when somebody submits for a job, whether it's, myself helping the search committee or a hiring manager doing whatever, but one of the first things people will do is they will go looking for you online. So if you're a viable candidate, if you're in the maybe pile, they're going to seek out your LinkedIn profile, your Facebook page, your Instagram, your TikTok, I don't even know what some of these logos are, but they're going to go looking for you because they're going to want to learn a little bit more about you before they invest their time or, bring you into the next phase. If there is a discrepancy on what your resume says to what your LinkedIn profile says, a large portion of the time, that's enough of a flag to take you out of the running. They don't even want to ask the question a lot of time. They don't want to go through trying to figure out, well, is this because it was an oversight? Is it this or that? They'll just, hey, you know what? We've got 5 or 8 other individuals that look pretty good. Not sure what's going on here, but we've got some other options that we can explore. So you definitely will benefit from having a LinkedIn profile these days. And certainly making sure that you've got that updated. It doesn't have to be super robust. You don't have to go through, a ton of different, activities or whatever on your LinkedIn necessarily, but having your work history accurate, education, if appropriate, a couple of those things, kind of the basic elements on LinkedIn, I would strongly recommend you do. And then networking, as much as you can get around in the area, in the region, as much as you can expand your circles of influence, it will serve you infinitely in your career progression and especially directly for a job search. This is a tremendously small industry, and the longer you are in it, the more you'll realize that pretty much everybody's connected to everybody. And so, making sure that you're playing in tournaments or serving on a committee or going to section meetings or, any number of different things, partially to benefit what the event is being put on for. But the other side of it is just to be able to develop those relationships and strengthen those relationships with your other golf professionals and the others in the industry. And then you'll be able to call on them when you need, support, assistance, whatever it might be, or maybe you make an impression on somebody and they hear a job's coming open and they give you a phone call, before anybody else. There are still a fair number of jobs, even though anyone I hear about, we try to get up on the job board, but there's still a fair number of jobs that they just don't want to post. And so, making sure that you're on the tongues of as many, people in the industry as possible, can help you to be in those conversations when those come about. All right, communication with employers. There's a couple questions about, career consultant going to speak to employer or GM about compensation, about what assistants should be paid or head pro should be paid. So I just wanted to address that from a couple different standpoints. So first off, every management posting that goes on the board goes into a 48-hour hold, so we can review it and can and do give suggestions on everything from compensation to the wording in the posting to the benefits included, work-life balance, all those things. And so if it's an open position, we are absolutely not pushing the employers, but providing as much information as possible to the employers to make sure that when that job posting actually goes out, it doesn't look like a posting that might have been made 5 or 10 years ago. Right. And just, as one example, in 2024 for the jobs that went on PGA.org, just in the complimentary posting, not even executive search or paid searches, those conversations and sending the compensation report before it goes live and all those different things accounted for nearly a $1.4 million increase nationwide on those jobs. So the previous position had been paid, let's say, 60,000, and through some of these conversations, the job post goes up at 75. If there's a PGA member in place, I will not talk to the employer directly, and that covers a lot of different contexts of what a conversation might look like. If a phone call ever comes where they say, we're kind of thinking about making a change at our assistant professional or our head professional, what options are out there, how's the marketplace? Sorry, that conversation, as long as you have a PGA member there, we're not talking about that. It is absolutely against my personal beliefs on it. It's against the way that the association and the department ever views anything. Is our job is to support the PGA members and the positions out there, and if the employer makes a change and they need help, we'll help them for the next PGA member that's hopefully going into that role. But that conversation just doesn't happen. And then similarly, me having a conversation with an employee, let's say a non-PGA general manager, about a PGA professional who's working there and what their compensation is and what it should be, I really don't like that dynamic at all. I don't think I've ever seen it play out incredibly positively. But the main reason is I don't have a vested interest, and there may be a weird dynamic that develops between that golf professional and the GM or the board or whoever it is, by having that third party kind of thrust into the middle. So instead, if there's a need for a conversation like that or a reset at the facility, I'll absolutely work with the PGA professional to do everything we can to prepare them for that conversation. Identifying the right data, negotiation strategies, how to story tell around what we're looking for, any of these different things, but really empowering you as the PGA professional to be able to confidently go into that boardroom or general manager's office or whatever the case may be. That coaching role is a lot more where I spend my time and would prefer to spend my time. And then just speaking on executive search, there was a couple questions on, what information am I sharing with people interested in a position, or what information gets shared with the club or the search committee on people inquiring about the job. First and foremost, anytime I have a conversation with a PGA professional, that conversation is confidential to me and that individual. And it doesn't matter if the reason that I had that conversation was because we are doing a search for a certain facility. They don't get to know what we talked about. There are times when I've got maybe a lead assistant that's trying to get his first head pro job, and he's told me that he's bringing his head pro in as his mentor and boss and whatever to help him propel into that next position, where those conversations become a three-way conversation, but only if I am very directly told that that's the situation. There's never an assumption, because I don't know, everybody's got a different situation. You may not be really ready to tell your head pro that you're looking for something else. There's really a number of reasons why that could happen, but so that's first and foremost. Every conversation is 100% confidential between me and that golf professional. When it comes to the information that's going out about executive search, I do my best to share everything in as full a disclosure and transparency as possible, in the same way to anybody that's interested in the job. So if I get phone calls from 10 different professionals considering applying for a certain position, I'm going to tell them as much as I can about what the committee has told me, what is on the posting, what's not on the posting. Really trying to give as much information to figure out, one, if it's a fit for them, and then two, how they can best shine when it comes to going after the job. And that's really where my role is at that point. It's, I'm not the one making the choices, right? The career consultants are not really engaged in the decision-making process. We are facilitating the process. So my job isn't to say, here, this is the professional that's the right fit for it, because that's what the committee is there for, or that's what the general manager is there for, if that's the situation. My role is to help every PGA professional that's applying for that job to shine as brightly as they can in their own individual way, right? Because everybody's going to bring different things to the table and have different areas of strength and all that stuff. So my job is to help everybody as best I can to really look as amazing as they are and as amazing as they can be as they're going through that process. And then it'll be up to the committee to kind of figure out, if that's what they're looking for, or if there's a different set of check marks that they're after. So that's, I just wanted to kind of clarify how some of that goes from that standpoint. Some current industry trends and planning. Employment, we do continue to see additions, new positions being created at facilities. One of the ways that we track that is this service dollars per round KPI, which continues to go up over the last few years. Definitely seeing more applicants for most jobs than we did a couple years ago. If you go back 15, 20 years, even a mediocre job, there were 70 applicants for. A couple years ago, immediately on the backside of COVID, people didn't really want to move around too much. There were limitations on a number of different things. There were some really good jobs that only got 15 or 20 applicants. We're seeing that go up a fair amount more, especially at the management level. There are more jobs opening up. So this is something that's been talked about for several years now, as far as kind of the aging demographic among PGA members and golf professionals in the industry, and the wave of retirements that's kind of looming. So we are starting to see that from a data perspective. The most recent 12 months, year over year, we've been 13.4% higher with management level job openings. So that might be, head professional, general manager, director of instruction, any number of things, but just, in that management role, has definitely been on the uptick. And then, I kind of mentioned this earlier, what they're, it seems, my opinion, they're really looking for is combination of experience and personality. There's been several candidates that I've seen in processes who were really, really, really good. But the committee felt like, well, they've been at the same facility for 8 years. I'm not sure they have enough varied experience to understand, the different situations that may come about. They know that place really well and how that membership ticks and the quirks about that place. But, maybe we're going to go with this individual that's been at 3 different facilities in the last 8 years. They don't want somebody that's been at 6 or 7 facilities in 8 years. But there is a fine balance, and it seems like, a little bit more of that varied experience is slightly preferred. Professional development wise, I've noticed several postings and searches recently where there's been a significantly higher education stipend getting included. I think some of this, I mentioned here later, that corporate world realities, with work-life balance becoming a little bit more accepted at most facilities and places in the industry. That's something that in the corporate world has been normal for years, right? Like, yes, if you've got a big project, or if you're trying to, make a name for yourself, you're going to put in a lot more hours. It's not unique to us, right? But there's also a balance that they kind of expect and has become normalized. And the concept of continuing education and professional development. I know a few companies where they've got a $60,000 a year budget for continuing education at a company that has 50 people at it. And so they expect their individuals to keep growing because they don't want to get left behind. They need to know the best ways to do things, cutting edge approaches, that sort of thing. So we are seeing that come in a little bit more. And then, just to briefly mention, we are seeing a lot less questions or pushback on the work-life balance component. It's not top of mind for some of the positions. They're not starting from that standpoint. But as soon as, again, I reach out and hey, here's the posting, this is something you might want to think about, because the reality is we've got data to show that the opportunities, the job openings that are getting the most applicants, the most quality applicants, are the ones that not only have the compensation threshold at a certain level, but also have something in the work-life balance realm included and clearly stated in there. And it's definitely becoming a lot more accepted. And then just from an industry perspective, continuing to see record rounds. We'll see how things play out this year, but most of the facilities I talked to were still up last year. And then finally here, there's a few questions about posting a job. So this is a resource that I helped put together last year for the career services team. Really goes from A to Z on how to post a job, what to think about, trying to make sure that you don't forget about anything, right? So happy to share this out to anybody. Maybe we'll send this out with the next update on the compo review. But something that helps you, or maybe you can share with the GM or whoever else is involved, to be able to really make sure that you're getting a nice robust posting. Another thing that we've been tracking is work-life balance related best practices, let's call it. So we've got kind of a spreadsheet that we keep that shows different ideas, specific clubs that it was implemented at, so that if you're trying to figure out, okay, how do I address this at our club? How do I I know I need a job posting that has this addressed, but how do I say it? So we've got a number of different examples to be able to say, okay, hey, we don't have to reinvent the wheel. This is what this other club did. Let's see if that works here. Really looking at the core elements of the position. A lot of this is covered in that PDF I just showed. But making sure that you paint as full a picture as possible especially when you're doing that complimentary posting, which is primarily word-based. Giving as much information, because effectively, if it doesn't say it in the post, then it doesn't exist, right? Whether that's time off or flexibility or income potential or whatever the case may be. If it doesn't say it on there, the potential applicant is going to assume that it's not there. So we want to do as much as we can to get all those things identified and highlighted. And just to kind of drive that point home, here's a couple examples of what I would consider less than ideal job postings. There's not a whole lot here in terms of what you would expect, what experience they're looking for, any of those things, versus one like this. And this is a continuation of the same posting, whereas the page before was 2 postings. This is 1 posting. Much more robust information about the club, position overview, what we're looking for, what you can expect from us, work-life balance statement, great breakdown on additional income that's coming or potential, and just really gives you a lot more of an idea of what you would be getting into if you decide to apply. And that's all I had for the plan portion of this. So hopefully, like I said, I really did appreciate the questions that came in through the Google form, and I know I didn't address all of them directly, but here's my phone and email information. If you want to give me a call, shoot me a text, email, whatever is best for you. Would love to set up a time and plan a time to get together and address any other questions you may have, or help with any other things that may be on your plate. It has been a very, very, very busy moving season around here. So November, actually October, November, December, between Wisconsin and Illinois, we had a tremendous amount of movement. At one point in November, I had 9 paid searches going on simultaneously. So to say I've been a little hard to reach at times would be an understatement. And I'm working on a few things to delegate and improve that even in the busy times. But we are starting to get to the backside of that stretch, and would love to find a time that works for both of our schedules to connect and figure out any way I can help you. So I don't want to hold anybody up if you do need to depart the call to get back to the rest of your day, but I would like to open it up to any questions, whether it's something that was mentioned on the presentation here, or if there's any other questions that you've got that you'd like to pose at this time, whether it's through the chat feature or kind of directly if you want to come off mute or come on video. Anybody have anything you'd like to throw out? Potentially not at this time. All right, well, seeing none, Erica, I would like to thank you for organizing today, and really appreciate everybody that's on the call. Thank you for making the time and joining us. Hopefully this was beneficial. Like I said, I know I went a little quickly and kind of high level on some of these elements, and if there's something you'd like to dive in on a little bit more deeply, or have some additional kind of personalized questions, would certainly understand. Those are usually better served in a private phone call than in a context like this. So would love to connect with you at some point. And I will be up a couple weeks from now for the spring meeting, and look forward to seeing as many of you as possible in person at that. And if I don't see you there, hopefully I'll see you at one of the tournaments this spring, and hope everybody has a great 2025 season in front of them. So thank you, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks, Ryan. Take care, everybody. Have a great day.